Very exciting topic of taxes, right? I'm sure you're all just dying to know about how to do your 1040 to the IRS. So I'm just kidding. I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. I know it's a dull topic and a scary one. Spoiler alert, it doesn't need to be scary, and maybe even this year you'll get some money back. So I will jump straight into it. If you have questions, there will be a Q&A break at the end. So if you can just hold off on the questions, because I'll probably answer a lot of them as we go through. But there's definitely going to be some time for questions, so no stress. All right, I'll get started. So I'm Natalie, right? I'm from California. I'm now based in Vienna. I came here in 2015 and I've been here ever since. I actually live in Lower Austria. So if any of you decide to become lifers, as they're called, as in you're going to stay in Austria for the rest of your life and build a house, start a family, let me know. Join the club, right? Anyways, so my background's in finance and IT. I specialize in US expat taxes. I am an IRS enrolled agent, and I've also created MyExpatTaxes. So think about it as TurboTax for US expats. So as you go through your tax journey as an expat, you're going to realize all of the resources that you have used in the past, if you did do your taxes, are not really helpful, right? Your family accountant, the US tax softwares, it's a little bit tough to kind of use them as an expat. So that's where MyExpatTaxes comes into play, right? But before we get into that, let's talk about Fulbright and US taxation and why this is relevant for you. So for Fulbright perspective, Fulbright grants are subject to US income taxes. However, Fulbright doesn't need to issue you any tax documents, right? So if you were filing taxes before, you're probably really used to having a W-2, a 1099, which basically tells you exactly what to do, kind of, right? But at least guides you on what to do. Now, the fun part is Fulbright doesn't need to provide you any of that documentation, but your income is taxable. So you're kind of in this part where you're left in a guessing game of what do I report to the IRS? Do I need to report things to the IRS, especially that I'm working abroad? Answer's yes. So sorry, but it is what it is. And yeah, the IRS perspective is, anything paid for you to teach abroad, to lecture abroad, anything paid to you is includable in your gross income, period. No kind of question, negotiation about that. So basically, you're going to have to calculate your own gross income, and then you're going to have to figure out kind of where your money falls into. So Dune did tell me it's only teaching assistants, so I can make this easy for you. All of your income from Fulbright is going to fall into wages, right? All of the money that you're earning as a teaching assistant is considered salary because you are working for payment, right? So that's really where you're going to look to report your income. And when I say you have to calculate your own gross income, you're going to have to know how much you were paid, grossly, right? So how much did you earn for the tax year 2020 and the tax year 2021, right? You're going to have to understand exactly how much to report as your wages. But we'll get into that. But that's essentially the big summary. So if you take anything away from this, it's that, yes, your income from Fulbright is taxable and it's considered wages. All right. So no matter where you work, it is considered wages on your Form 1040. All righty. So now a little bit of a sales pitch, because obviously I need to do that. So MyExpatTaxes, the tax software we created, is really easy to use. It's exactly for expats, file in less than 30 minutes. We charge 149 euros. Since you're in Fulbright, I've done this now, I think the third time with Fulbright. Anyone that wants to go, use the voucher code on this slide and it'll be 99 euros instead of 149. So that's probably the biggest discount we give. But obviously, I mean, you guys are teaching assistants. I think the discount is a good one, right? So anyways, you can read everything else on the screen. We have really a lot of capabilities in here. I think for your tax profile, it's probably not all necessary, but you do have the ability to always talk to me or my team of tax professionals. And even though it's a software and it's do it yourself, if you feel that you need someone to help walk you through it, there's someone there. So it's not just a computer, it's real people behind the computer that know what your situation is and can help you. All righty. What are we going to cover in this session? I think you probably have heard about the stimulus payments. I don't know if you've gotten the stimulus payments yourself. If you haven't, you can get them. If you don't know anything about that, I'll go into it. Otherwise, I will go into kind of the tax season changes. So what comes with this new tax season? Do you need to file? What are the deadlines to file now that you're living abroad? And kind of tips for reporting your Fulbright income. Okay, so the stimulus payments were done last year, as some of you may or may not have known. So basically the first round was $1,200 per taxpayer and then $500 per qualifying dependent. The second round, which was in December 2020, was $600 per taxpayer and $600 per qualifying dependent. So that's kind of the money part. But now let's know all the other key terms. So American abroad, even if you're abroad, you're still eligible for the stimulus payments. It doesn't matter where you are living, where you're working. As long as you're a US citizen, you have a social security number, you're most likely eligible for the stimulus payment. Now, if you want to talk about the stimulus payment to the IRS, or you want to know kind of how to Google it or find more information, just note that it's actually called the economic impact payment, or on your 2020 tax return, it's going to be referred to as the recovery rebate credit, right? So everyone calls it stimulus payments, but these are kind of the official terminologies, so to say. And what do you need? You need a valid social security number. I think that should not be a problem for most of you in this call. You should have a social security number, right? And then this is kind of the most important part, is you cannot be the dependent of another filer. So if a parent or guardian has claimed you on their tax return on the past, you should definitely check in and make sure to see if they're claiming you on their tax return for 2020. That's really important, because even if they've claimed you in 2019 for their 2019 taxes, that means you probably didn't get any stimulus payments, right? But you can still back claim them now on your 2020 tax return. You just have to make sure you're not claimed as a dependent. So I tell you that now. If you don't know what this is, if you don't know what the status is, definitely go and, text your parents. I'm sure they'll be glad to hear from you, and just kind of ask, hey, are you going to be claiming me on your tax return or not? Just so you know if you're eligible for the payments or not. So that's a discussion obviously you need to have with them, but very important information to know, so you know if you're going to be getting a nice refund or not this year. So what does it take to be eligible? Like I said, well, you need a valid social security number. I cannot stress that enough, right? Even if you are, say, married to someone that is not a US citizen and they do not have a social security number, or they only have an ITIN, that's fine. You can still get your portion of the stimulus payments. You just need a valid social security number. You need to make sure you're not claimed as dependent. I think that's going to be the issue for a lot of people that obviously are a bit younger. I know that last year when people came in for MyExpatTaxes, we had a lot of 20-year-olds coming in and filing their tax return and then realizing they weren't eligible for the payment because they were a dependent. So just, again, check in. And then there is an income threshold limit. So if you are considered a high earner, and high earner in this case is about 75,000 US dollars for a single filer, then you probably won't get the full stimulus payment. But, I don't think that that's too much of a big issue, right? If it is, then just keep in mind, if you're over 75,000 US dollars as a single filer, you're probably not going to get the full payment, but there are ways around that, which I'll get into. Regardless, do you need to file taxes to be eligible? So now if you're sitting here and you're thinking, I've never filed taxes, or I don't need to file taxes because maybe you didn't make enough money to meet the filing threshold, but you want the stimulus payments, I'm sorry to say you do have to file your taxes for 2020 in order to claim any payments. So just keep that in mind. The IRS is no longer offering kind of a non-filer portal. If you knew what that was last year, it's not an option anymore. So you just have to file a tax return to get this money. All right, I think that's pretty clear. But again, kind of important numbers to go over again is what should you be entitled to if you are entitled to the full payment. You're looking at $1,200 for the first payment, then $600 for the second payment. So that's collective of $1,800 that you could be claiming as a refund on your tax return. And keep in mind, obviously, there are talks of a third stimulus payment and ongoing stimulus payments. So basically, if you qualify for the first and the second round, and there are further rounds, that you'd probably just qualify for those as well. So it is important to file a 2020 tax return if you haven't filed taxes before, just to make sure that you get kind of into that bucket so the IRS knows about you. Because if they don't know about you, they can't give you money, right? So of course, there's a couple more numbers on there. If you have qualifying children that can be claimed on your tax return, you'll get additional money for them. Just keep in mind that they have to be someone you can claim as dependent, right? In the MyExpatTaxes tax software, there's going to be qualifying questions to know if you can claim someone as a dependent. They have to be younger than 17, and they need a valid social security number by the due date of your return. So, you know, that's kind of what the money accounts to and why it's maybe worth it to file a tax return. Now, let's get into the should you file a tax return and is it required by law, right? So what I just talked about was why you probably should file one. Now it's do you actually have to file one? And maybe you don't, right? Because the filing thresholds are quite higher for this year. So you can see in the table, it's starting at 12,400, right? And it continues on from there. So kind of important things to note is I will just say, if you see that screenshot of a passport, that's not fake, right? You just look into any passport, and at the back of your passport, it's going to tell you no matter where you live, where you work, you're going to have to file your US taxes. So, you know, I know this is the start of your kind of expat journey. If you choose to stay abroad, do be warned that US taxes will follow you throughout that whole journey. But like I said, it's not really a scary thing once you have a handle of how to do it, and you know what the filing deadlines are, and you know what you need to do, and you have great tax software to use, right? But it is something that's important to know as you start this journey, so you are always compliant, and that you are subject to the same laws as your family and friends back home, right? There's really no changes. The only thing is you do have a lot of good expat tax benefits, so to say, so that you're not double taxed. So that will be important, and I'll get into that later. Another one is, what does gross income mean? I get this question all the time. So if you're looking at this number and you're wondering, did I make enough money to go over that? You have to think about how much money did you make from all sources everywhere in the world, right? So it's including the Fulbright money that you made. This is including any summer jobs that you did. This is including any jobs you had before Fulbright. Any type of money you made as a freelancer, as a salaried employee, et cetera, counts as gross income, whether you worked in the US or you worked abroad. So just think about it this way. Every single dollar you earned between January 1st to December 31st, whether it comes in the form of salary, self-employment, rental, investments, whatever, whether it comes from the US or abroad, that is all gross income. And that's all included into this amount that you have to calculate to understand if you need to file your taxes or not. Keep in mind, there's even two more kind of lower thresholds. So if you're married to a non-US citizen, you'll probably be married filing separately, which you see on the table. There's no typo there. The filing threshold is $5. So that's kind of like me. I'm married to an Austrian citizen. I file as married filing separately. As long as I make over $5, I have to file my taxes. It's crazy. This happened, I think, in the tax change for 2018, and it's just kind of stuck since then. So that's also very tough. Also keep in mind that if you're married, but you're living apart from your spouse for the whole year, you might still fall in this $5 bucket. So that is important to note. And if you are self-employed, so if you did any type of freelancing gig over this year and you made more than 400 net income from that job, you also have to file taxes because you might be subject to US self-employment tax, which starts at $400. So that, you know, keep that in mind, because even if you don't meet the $12,000 threshold, but you meet the other one for self-employment, you still have to file your taxes. So I know it's a lot of if, or, thens, and that, but basically, this is the table. Think about how much money you made. And like I said, even if you don't have to file your taxes, if you didn't claim the stimulus check before, you might want to file your taxes because then you can get a really good refund. All right. So filing deadlines, and also, I didn't say this before, but this is all recorded. You're going to get the slides afterwards. So if you're scribbling down notes, I'm sorry. I should have said that earlier. So you can put down your pen and pencil. All the filing deadlines are here. Most important is April 15th, as everyone knows, that is the date you do have to pay if you owe taxes. But as someone who's abroad on April 15th, you actually don't need to file your taxes until June 15th. So anyone that is abroad, right? So basically any expat that's abroad, your filing deadline is always June 15th. You always have a 2-month automatic extension. You don't need to request anything. You don't need to tell the IRS anything in advance. You just file your tax return by June 15th. You make sure that you file it as an expat, right? So that there's going to be a statement attached that says you're overseas and you qualify for this automatic 2-month extension. But that's really all you need to do. And then if you wanted to extend it further, you could file a filing extension to October 15th. That's always possible. And even if you want to go further than that, there's actually a way to get an extension until December 15th by writing a personal letter to the IRS, but most people don't really need that. So also, if you haven't filed taxes before and now you're thinking, oh, I should have filed taxes, I might be in some trouble, don't stress too much. Just make sure you file your back taxes ASAP to avoid penalties or interest. I don't think it'll apply for most of you in this group, but if someone has been abroad for quite a while and you haven't filed taxes, there are amnesty programs from the IRS. One is called streamlining. We offer that as well. And essentially you only need to file 3 back years of taxes and 6 back years of FBARs, and then you're fully compliant. Even if you haven't filed for 10, 20 years, the IRS says, okay, only 3 back years and you're good to go. So something to keep in mind if it applies to you. All right, so back to getting the stimulus payment. And I do cover this a lot because it's kind of—
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand, but can we go back to the previous slide? Stupid question. I'm not sure what the difference between filing and payment is.
Filing is actually filing your taxes, right? So submitting your tax return to the IRS. Paying is paying any tax due. I know that sounds ridiculous, but the IRS basically says if you owe money, you should pay whatever you think is due, even if you don't finish your tax return. So say that you think maybe based on my tax return last year, I owed $500. I'm just going to pay $500 by April 15th just to pay them. And then by June 15th, I will actually do my tax return and I'll realize that I only owed $300. So then you would get a $200 refund. So it's really, if you think you have tax due, you have to make the payment by April 15th. Otherwise, there's interest. Again, a lot of expats, they just file and pay by June 15th. It's just keep in mind that if you pay 2 months later, there's going to be interest that's accrued. It's most likely not that much, maybe $10 or so. But, obviously, if you want to pay the minimal amount, make sure you pay anything you think is due by April 15th. So I would say if you think taxes are due, just do your taxes now. Pay and file by April 15th. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, I think so.
Perfect. All right. So going back to how to actually claim the stimulus payments. So if you use MyExpatTaxes, any other tax software, or any other tax firm, or you do it yourself, there is a question of how much money did you make, or how much money did you get for the economic impact payment round 1 and round 2. You would write 0 if you didn't get anything. You would write 1,000 if you 1,200, whatever amount you got. So you should have gotten a letter from the IRS to say that you got this payment. Obviously, if you have no idea what I'm talking about and you never got any money from the IRS, the answer is 0. Right? So that probably means that your parents claimed you on their tax return last year so that they, maybe they got some money on your behalf. something like that. But basically, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you didn't get any money, you probably can claim it on this tax return. So anyways, you would complete your 2020 taxes. You would have to calculate your adjusted gross income for eligibility. There is a worksheet. So I took a screenshot of the worksheet for any of those people that are like, I'm a math whiz, I'm gonna do my taxes myself. I don't need any tax software or person to do it for me. Go, I'm that person, right? Until I create the tax software. But in the instructions for 1040, there's a worksheet. I took a screenshot of that worksheet. You're going to figure out your adjusted gross income. You're going to figure out if you're eligible for not. And then if you do qualify, you should basically use this worksheet to transfer the money you're due onto your Form 1040, which you would see in the third screenshot. That's what your Form 1040 will look like. You will see line 30 is a recovery rebate credit. If there's amount of money there, that is your refund from the stimulus payments. So if you do your tax return, you see amount there, you're not like, where did that come from? That's the stimulus payments. And then anyways, combining with anything else, if you have taxes withheld, etc., that's going to go all the way down to line 35, which I highlighted, which is the amount of money refunded to you. So, definitely might be worth it to look at a tax return for this year. So let's get into your first year abroad, right? So if this applies to any of you, I'm sure most of you, again, what is gross income and what do you need to calculate? So all income earned in the US and, your local country, so right now it's Austria, between January 1st to December 31st, before local taxes or expenses, right? So this is everything. If you did any jobs before, plus Fulbright, etc., gross income, all investment income. If you have an investment account set up and you get interest, dividends, that's also gross income, right? If you rented out anything, if you sold anything, all of that is included. Now, what I would recommend to Fulbrighters is to claim the foreign earned income exclusion. So I don't know if any of you know this term, the foreign earned income exclusion. Once you become an expat, you will know this term by heart because it's a very big part of expat taxes. So like I said, this is one of the main expat tax benefits, right? It's called foreign earned income exclusion. Sometimes you see it as FEIE. Sometimes you see it as 2555, which is the actual form that it's on your tax return. So what that basically is, I'll get into another slide, is really just subtracting any foreign earned income from your US taxes, right? So say that from Fulbright, you earned $5,000 US and you qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion. Basically, it would subtract $5,000 US from your taxable income, right? So if you have $5,000 from working in the US before, so say in January, and then you have $5,000 from Fulbright, you're going to have $10,000 total US dollars as income. Foreign earned income exclusion is going to subtract that $5,000 of foreign earned income from that amount so that you only have taxable income of $5,000. So, it's a really good kind of expat tax benefit to claim, but you do need to be physically abroad for 334 days, which I will describe in the next slide. And also another thing for your first year abroad, if you were working in the US before you joined Fulbright, you probably have to file state taxes depending on the state you were based in. So just, remember that that's also an aspect of filing taxes, federal and state. Okay, so the foreign earned income exclusion, again, for those that like to do it yourself, but really actually do it yourself on paper, I took a screenshot of 2555, which is the expat tax form, and part 3 is going to be where you're qualifying for the physical presence test. So in order to claim the foreign earned income exclusion, you have to pass either the bona fide residence test, which none of you will pass, because the bona fide residence test is that you need to be a resident of a foreign country for a full tax year. So you have to be a resident of Austria from January 1st to December 31st of 2020. I don't think any of you pass that. If you do, you can claim it under that test. Obviously, if you came in after January 1st, you just don't pass it for your first year abroad. So you have to qualify under the physical presence test. So you're going to have to calculate a 12-month period where you were abroad for 330 full days. Basically, that just means that you cannot have been in the US for 36 days or more than 36 days. But the 12-month period can change. So it's not January to December, because obviously you would all not pass that, as we just went over. But you can choose from the date that you moved abroad. So if you moved abroad, say August 2020, you can use August 2020 to August 2021, right? So you can change this 12-month period based on when you actually moved abroad. The only thing is, within those 12 months, you have to physically be outside of the US for 330 full days, right? So if you went abroad in August, so say August 1st, so you would do start date of August 1st, 2020 to end date August 1st of 2021 or July 31st of 2021, and say that you went home for Christmas, right? I mean, also this was impossible to fly back and forth, so I don't know if all of you have that much travel in your passport, but say that you were able to go back for Christmas or something like that. If you had stayed over in the US for say 10 days over Christmas break, yeah, no problem, right? If you had stayed for 40 days somehow, you don't pass the test. So kind of that's what it comes down to. Also keep in mind that if you worked out of the US, that's not foreign income. So any of you that worked for Fulbright remotely out of the US, that is not foreign income. That is US income. Income is sourced where you physically are based when you perform that work. So you're gonna have to think about if you kind of did some remote work. I see someone raise their hand, so go ahead, you can ask a question. I'll wait till she pops up with a question, so I'll keep going. But anyways,
Madeline, because someone wrote in the chat that her mic doesn't work. She said, I've been here since September 2019. Would I qualify for this?
If you're there since September 2019, you could probably go under the bona fide residence test. So you could go either under each test, right? So if you are a resident in Austria before January 1st, 2020, then you could go under either test. It just depends which one fits better. I always recommend the bona fide residence test because your travel is not limited. So maybe that answers the question for you. But yes, you can qualify for this as well. I don't see any reason not to. Anyways, again, just a big note for everyone here. If you did work for Fulbright remotely, make sure you know which days you worked for it remotely. From there, you're going to have to calculate what was the income you earned during that remote period. And you're going to have to make sure that you classify that as US source income and not foreign. And you cannot exclude US income on 2555, right? Because that's not foreign earned income, that's US earned income. Just something to keep in mind. Obviously, if you use the MyExpatTaxes tax software, we do ask you which dates you worked in the US, even business trips in the US, and we calculate that for you. So, might be worth it. Otherwise, very important for you to know what is US versus foreign.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah.
What about, so you talked specifically if you're in the US and you're doing remote work for Fulbright, what if you are outside of the US and you're doing remote work from the US?
So if you're outside of the US and you're working, that's foreign income. It's based where you work. Doesn't matter if it's in Austria or wherever. Mm-hmm. If you're based in the US, that is US income. If you're based outside of the US, that is foreign earned income.
Okay, and so foreign earned are subject to the local country's taxes, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a digital nomad, we get into specifics here. If you're based in Austria as a resident, yes, it's subject to Austrian taxes because you're a resident of Austria and you're signed up. If you are someone that, I don't know how you would be doing it in this pandemic, right? But if you're plane hopping and you're working from Bali for 2 weeks, then you're working from, I don't know, wherever else in the world for 2 weeks, you're not going to be subject to taxes in those local countries because they don't even know that you're really working there. You're a digital nomad, so to say.
Yeah.
So that would be foreign earned income that's not subject to local taxation. But I kind of just went down a rant there. Yes, it's foreign earned income. So you could exclude it on 2555, if that answers your question.
Yes, but you still have to file that in your US taxes.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
No matter what, even if you can exclude all of your income, even if all your income is abroad. It does not matter. If you are over the gross filing threshold for worldwide income, you have to file your taxes. Okay. Most expats file taxes and never owe anything. A lot of them get money back, especially if you have children abroad, right? There's tax credits for you. So just keep that in mind. As an expat, if you make enough money to live, you probably have to file US taxes. You probably don't owe anything, but you still probably have to file. Alrighty. Well, actually, that just went to the Q&A break. So are there more questions? I mean, after this, I will have a couple of slides that you guys can kind of look at your leisure, which is kind of weird to say because it's taxes and I'm sure that's not fun reading it. But, you know, there's going to be a couple of slides about exactly what forms are useful for you, what's the FBAR, etc. But we can go through one-on-one questions right now if you want. Otherwise, I'll continue through. No takers? All right.
Oh, I do have a question. So sorry.
All right.
Sorry, you can really hear my Minnesotan accent there. Okay. My question is for the getting our money back, or what was it called? The back claim to the stimulus checks. Mm-hmm. If I did my taxes last year, but I know that my dad or I was claimed as a dependent last year as well, can I do the back claim, or because I filed my taxes last year, it probably won't work, right?
You can. Okay. So basically, even if you didn't get the stimulus payments last year because you were claimed as a dependent or whatever other reason, 2020 is a fresh start. So definitely talk to your parents, see if they're claiming you on their 2020 tax return. Probably ask them not to. And if they don't claim you on the 2020 tax return, you can definitely get the stimulus payment.
Super. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Couple tips for people that are planning to get the stimulus payment for 2020. As an expat, like I said, it's a little tough for taxes. So most tax firms, US tax software, sometimes they don't let expats e-file for one reason or the other, just because of the foreign aspect. So just make sure that whatever you do end up using, you e-file, which is if you choose to do your taxes yourself on paper, obviously you can paper file and you can send it in. Just know that it's going to be very delayed. So people that have paper filed their 2019 tax return earlier last year, so we're talking about, March, April of last year, it still hasn't even been processed yet because the IRS is so understaffed at this point due to the pandemic, and they basically don't really process paper filings at the moment. I mean, at least it's really reduced. So if you plan on getting it and you want a speedy refund, don't paper file, e-file, okay? That's going to be kind of your easiest bet. Make sure you have a US bank account that you're putting on there. If you're going to file a tax return, you can still use your US address on your tax return, even if you're living abroad. It's very common. I still use, my parents' US address in California just because it's easier to get mail from the IRS to a US address than having it sent to Austria, especially if you don't know if you're moving flats or anything the next month. So my kind of tips there is make sure you e-file your 2020 tax return, include a US bank account for direct deposit. You don't want a paper check. And if it's possible, it might be useful to use a US mailing address in case you get any communication from the IRS. It's a little bit easier to get a hold of that mail, right? If you have someone trusted in the US that will open the mail for you and let you know that you have it. Otherwise, when the IRS sends international mail, which they will do, right? So if you put a foreign address, they will send you a paper check for the stimulus payments, or they will send you a notice or anything to your foreign mailing address. Just note that it's about a 1-2 month delay. So it can be that you get a notice that says you need to reply 2 weeks ago because of the delay. So just some things to note. All righty. So.
Ask another question.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
Okay. I was just wondering, so in 2020, I was on unemployment for a while because of COVID, obviously. Does that also get included into my gross income?
So you should have a 1099G, right? You should have got one that is taxable unemployment compensation usually.
Okay. So I would include that into my gross income?
Yeah. It's US unemployment compensation, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, I have another question. So you said we don't have a W-2 for Fulbright. So how are we supposed to calculate it? Should we just go into our bank statements and then just add them up?
I mean, you will have your contract with Fulbright, right? So
Yeah.
you'll have a contract of how much you'll be paid. And then from there, you should be able to calculate what's, your monthly payments, right? So how much did you earn up until December 31st of 2020 and how much is earned outside of that? So it's really just a math equation.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I have another question. When it comes to these stimulus payments, you said that we should be able to get the $600 checks that have already gone out. And if an additional 1,400 is passed, would we also get those? So would we get the entire 2,000?
Yes. So if you did not get anything, so there's 2 rounds already that went out. There's 1,200 and then there's 600, right? So you would be eligible for both if you didn't receive them already. You could get both of them. So that'd be 1,800. And if another one is passed, then that should be automatically just going to you if you qualify for the first 2. Obviously, I'm just speaking from previous experience because it can be that the third one might be passed with different eligibility rules, right? But if it follows the same pattern, then yes, you would be eligible for that as well. So from what it seems like, normally once you qualify, so I filed 2019 taxes, I qualified for the first stimulus payment. The second stimulus payment just came to me automatically. I didn't have to do anything, right? Because the IRS already had my information. And if there's a third one, it should also go to me automatically. So if you haven't gotten the stimulus payments yet and the IRS doesn't really know that you're eligible for them, you should file a 2020 tax return. On that 2020 tax return, you can back claim round 1, 1,200, back claim round 2, 600. So that's 1,800 that you should see as a refund on your 2020 taxes. And then the next one that comes should automatically just be deposited into your bank account if you give the IRS one. That's how it should work.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a really quick question. When we put our Austrian income into, when we file our Austrian income, that would be also like a pre-tax, like the gross amount we get paid.
Gross, brutal.
Okay.
It's brutal.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Make sure you also convert it to USD, right? That's also very important. So, our tax software, you put it in as euros. We use the IRS yearly average exchange rate to translate it to USD. So, if you end up doing your taxes yourself, make sure that you report everything in USD. The IRS does not want you to report it in euros.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay. Let's continue on. These are just helper slides, right? So I'm not going to go through all of them, just so you know what is there, what resources are available for you. These are some important forms as an expat that you normally will be using to file your taxes, right? So obviously 1040 is the overview form. There's some schedules associated with 1040. You see the 2555 that I talked to, that's FEIE, aka Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, which is what I talked to about earlier. There's 1116, which is another one that if you are, I would say if you're living longer in Austria and you are paying taxes in Austria, you might want to use 1116 instead, which is a foreign tax credit. It's kind of hard to decide between these two. I say if you're not paying any Austrian taxes because you just, you didn't work in Austria long enough, obviously use 2555. That's going to be a lot more useful to you. If you are paying Austrian income taxes, usually Austrian income taxes are more than US taxes. So you also have the option to use 1116, which is the foreign tax credit known as FTC. Couple other forms there. FBAR is very important as well if you do have Austrian bank accounts, which I think all of you should have to get your payments. So the next slide is, okay, I'll skip over just to go over it. The FBAR is needed if you have more than 10,000 US dollars at any time in your non-US financial accounts. So if you have an Austrian bank account, say that, you're getting your income into it, maybe your parents or your family is also transferring you some money to help out. If at any point the combined amount of all your non-US financial accounts, so say an Austrian bank account, let's just say you have a German bank account too for some reason, right? If the combined maximum amount of those two accounts is over 10,000 US dollars, you have to file an FBAR. FBAR is just an informational form. The links here are active. You can click on the links. It'll show you what the form is. If you don't file it, there is a penalty. So I just recommend filing it because your Austrian bank is reporting your information to the US anyways. So make sure that you file as well so that the IRS doesn't end up sending you any notice. But FBAR is also important. So yes, on this list of forms, if you file your taxes yourself, just kind of look at these different forms and the instructions and see if they apply to you. This is kind of an overview of the different expat tax benefits. I've talked a lot about the foreigner income exclusion just because it's usually the most useful for Fulbright teaching assistants in their first year abroad. For those that are here longer, again, maybe you want to use the foreign tax credit. For those that become lifers like me and you have different streams of income, so, you know, other types of Austrian payments, such as social security benefits from Austria or any type of retirement payment, you might want to look at a tax tree, but I don't think that's too much necessary for this call. But yeah, here's a nice overview. Obviously, if you become a lifer, this is something you should always kind of have just so you know what's going on your tax return in future years. I showed this slide again before. So again, this is very important. Your FBAR, don't forget about it. The tax software we have does have your federal tax return, the FBAR and state in it. But if you're doing it yourself, it's really easy to miss the FBAR. And just remember, if you do have to do the FBAR on your federal tax return, you do also have to file Schedule B to report that you had to do an FBAR. That's also important to note. This is really just how to calculate your maximum account value, because the FBAR is not based on the ending balance. It's not based on the average amount, which would be a lot easier. It's based on the max amount. So literally, if someone transferred you $10,500 for one day, just so you could pay some big payment, and it was only in your bank account for, I don't know, half of a day or whatever, that's still your maximum amount for that year. So that still counts for the FBAR, if that makes sense. I hope it does. I know I get so many questions on this, but like I said, this is kind of an overall summary that we created for most of our clients. Just remember maximum. So even if it was only there for a second, even if you transferred it, if you had an Austrian account and a German account and you had 10,000 US dollars in your Austrian account, and then you transferred that full $10,000 to your German account, what you're reporting on your FBAR is $10,000 max for your Austrian account, $10,000 max for your German account. So even if that's not really what happened, that is the maximum amount in those accounts. Yeah, the FBAR is also a little tricky. But again, it's just informational. There is no tax calculated on the FBAR. It's just a very necessary form to file to the US Treasury, not to the IRS, but to the US Treasury, to make sure that you are compliant. That's pretty much it, right? I tried to cover the basics and not bore you too much with all the other tax information. All right, I think I'm still here for a couple more minutes. So let me know if this was useful, if you have other questions, if I just terrified you with all this information. Hopefully not. Otherwise, I'm happy to end it as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
I was wondering, I may have joined the call a few minutes late. Is there on the Austrian end, if taxes that we need to file or a process we need to go through, or is our employment too short? I know you're mentioning depending on the length, the duration of the employment.
So this is only for US taxes, right? With Austrian taxes, you'd have to talk to an Austrian tax accountant. I'm not qualified to give any advice there. I will say most people that are in Fulbright for only part of the year, you end up not paying Austrian taxes because the income's too low. So I will stop it there because I cannot give Austrian tax advice, but definitely check in for that. But ideally, if you're only here for part of the 2020 tax year, you probably won't be owing any Austrian income taxes if you're under their kind of income threshold.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Any other questions?
I have a question. My microphone works now. Thank goodness.
Oh, wonderful.
So I was the one who needed to ask a question about, since I've been in Austria since I came in to work last year, or 2 years ago now, I guess. And I was also employed over the summer, but I guess my question is will I have to do like I still have to report the money I've made here, correct?
Definitely.
Okay.
All the money you make, the IRS wants to know every single dollar, euro, pound, whatever that you make. So just if anyone takes anything away from this, every single dollar you make from January 1st to December 31st, no matter where it was earned, must be reported to the IRS.
Okay,
If, of course, you have to file a tax return.
As a follow-up to that, I'm in an apartment right now, and I was tasked in my apartment to open up an account for our apartment so that we can pay our monthly fees to our land person. And I was wondering, do I have to report any of that money that goes through that account since it's under my name?
If you have to file an FBAR, every single financial account that's not based in the US must be reported on the FBAR.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not on your US tax return that you report any bank accounts unless you have to file 8938. That's if you have over $200,000 US in your bank accounts abroad. So I don't think that applies to many people, but if you have over 10,000 US dollars combined in all of your Austrian bank accounts or any other non-US accounts and you have to file an FBAR, then you have to report every single account on that FBAR.
Okay, because I think it was because I wasn't aware that I would have to report any of that. I'll call it income, even though it wasn't earned money.
That's not income, right? You're not reporting any of that as income.
Right.
It's not income.
I just don't know another word for it right now, but this apartment money that, so after 1 month of people paying me, I was told to get rid of the account. So yeah. I've since gotten rid of it. So I think there was maybe less than €1,000 went into that account.
You would just figure out what's the maximum value of that account. So if, the day everyone put money into that account, so the funds, right? You would just figure out, okay, that's €1,000, whatever that is in USD, and you would put that on the FBAR. You have to file an FBAR. But there's no tax calculated on that. It's not income. It's just letting the US Treasury know what was the maximum balance in your non-US financial accounts.
Okay, and that goes FBAR.
That's on the FBAR, and that's to the US Treasury, not to the IRS. It's awesome. A little confusing, but okay. The IRS wants your Form 1040, and the US Treasury wants your FBAR. And those are two different places to submit it. So just keep that in mind. And again, if you do it yourself, really read the instructions so you know exactly where to file things and what deadlines to meet, because there are penalties on the FBAR. It's $10,000 if you don't file it, which is such a steep penalty, I know. I will say, I don't see so many penalty letters going out for people that have missed FBARs, but then again, that doesn't mean that they won't come, right? Because a lot of people before said that they never saw any letters for not filing their taxes, and then out of nowhere last year, we had so many expats coming in that had notices for tax year 2012, 13, 14. Right, as an expat, that the IRS said, hey, you owe us $10,000, $12,000 here. So who knows? Maybe they're just a little slow, but obviously if you have to file an FBAR, you have to file your tax return. Just do it. It's really not that scary if you know how to do it or you use the tools to do it. And it's just, I think it's easier to sleep at night, so it's worth it. And again, you might get the stimulus payments, so why not, right? If you're going to start filing taxes, might as well do it in the year where you'll probably get a refund.
And I have one more question. I'm so sorry if other people have questions. Since I've been in Austria for a complete year, other than maybe I've not returned to the US, would it make, would it make more sense for me to claim myself independently, or if my parents would still claim me?
That's a discussion to have with your parents, right? I think it's one of those where if there's some reason you being claimed on their tax return makes such a huge difference, and that, they would save a lot of tax, then it might be worth it for them. But if it doesn't make a huge difference on their tax return, you should file independently, and then you can get the stimulus payments. Because if you get claimed as a dependent, you're not going to get any of the stimulus payments. So it's something to have a discussion with your parents.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Alrighty. I think I've said all right probably 20 times at this point. Another question?
Yes, another question about the FBAR. So the max amount, that refers to at one point there was more than $10,000 in the account, not necessarily that there was over a year, you know, if you calculated all the ingoing, that would exceed 10,000.
It's the max balance, but that's combined.
Okay.
So if you have, yeah, let's say if you only have one Austrian bank account, if your balance never went over 10,000 US dollars, and that's your only foreign financial account, you don't need to file an FBAR. If at 1 second it went over 10,000 US dollars, you have to file an FBAR. If you have two Austrian bank accounts and at one time, bank account number one had $5,100 and bank account number two had $5,000, you have $10,100 combined as a max balance, so you have to file an FBAR.
Okay, and now with that, how do you find the max to your bank account? Is that just like in somehow
you're gonna have to go through your bank statements? Okay. No bank will. Most banks, I've never met a bank yet that has told you what your max balance is. Basically, what I do is you get a CSV like kind of output of all your transactions, and you start figuring out what your maximum balance is. Right. You can also look at your monthly statements to see which month you had the most in. Right. I would say if you can't get to the penny, that's okay, but you should try your best to get to the most accurate max balance you can, because again, remember that the Austrian banks, all foreign banks, because of FATCA, they are reporting all of that information to the IRS and US Treasury. So obviously if the US Treasury knows you had $20,000 in the account and you report that you only had 1,000, maybe one day that poses a problem. Right. But again, you don't need to get to the penny. I think if you are in close range, it should be okay, as long as you really tried.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's only for the months of 2020, correct?
So that's only, I mean, this is for your 2020 FBAR, right? So it's only between January 1st, December 31st of 2020.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
Can I ask a quick question?
One more. Yeah.
Okay, this is my first time filing taxes, first time working. So this might be kind of a stupid question.
No stupid questions. No worries.
How does filing actually work? Like, do you do it through the IRS website? Do you have to send in forms? What is filing?
Filing, it depends. All right, I'll say this. The easiest way is, I think most people, they're going to find a tax software to file taxes. So like if you go into MyExpatTaxes, you would create an account. You would answer questions about how much income you made. At the very end, you're going to have a bunch of forms to look over to say, this is what you owe, this is what you get as a refund, this is your tax return. You're going to authorize it and you're going to electronically file it to the IRS, and then you're going to get a confirmation that it was filed to the IRS. That is how most people do their taxes, via tax software. If you want to do it the old school way, you would go and look up all the forms you need, right? Every single form is free, available on the internet, right, from the IRS website. So you would figure out what forms you need. You would take a pen, right, fill it in. You would look for the address you need to send it to, and you would send it in an envelope and send it to the IRS. And they won't confirm, but most likely they will receive it and note your filing. Or you go to a tax firm, right, and you tell them you want to file taxes, and they ask you questions and they fill out the forms for you. So that's kind of how to file taxes. The IRS does have free filing tax softwares. It's just not that easy for expats because they don't really accommodate the foreign income aspect so well. So yeah, keep that in mind. But that is filing taxes, right? Is basically just somehow giving the IRS the form 1040.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course, no problem. All right, that is going to be the last question. So if anyone has specific questions, right, there is an email there that you can use. Go ahead and send off an email. If we can answer your question easily, we will answer it. If, you know, obviously we have a very detailed question or you want consulting, we might quote you a fee to do any, you know, actual consulting, most likely not. But otherwise, if you just want to go ahead and try out the tax software and see how easy it is, I promise you it's easy, right? Just go in and create an account. It's free until the very end. You can even see if you're due a refund. And at that point, you can decide if you want to file or not. And if you do end up using MyExpatTaxes, use the voucher code, right? Don't pay the full price, just pay 99 euros. And, you know, I'm always here for you via this email, right? Maybe it's not me personally answering, but my team will be there for you. Otherwise, I wish you, you know, a great journey in your expat kind of adventure. I'm sorry that it was during such a kind of not fun year and that you couldn't really see everything that Austria had to offer, right? But welcome to Austria, and I hope you've enjoyed your time here.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so much,
much.
Natalie.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much for your time. And
Thank you
indeed,
so much.
Of
Thank you
course.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.